Hi, this is Shauna. Before we get to today's guest, I want to take a minute to learn more about you, the listener. We've put together a short survey at fueltalent.com/podcast to gather information on who's listening and to give you a chance to make suggestions and comments about the show. I want What Fuels You to be a great resource for you and your interests, and I hope these interviews give you practical advice along with inspiration for your career and life. Help us continue to serve you better by going to fueltalent.com/podcast. Thank you so much. Now let's start today's show. Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories, the years, and successes, who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way. I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Lisa Gersh. Lisa is an experienced operating executive and public company board member, having been the CEO of multiple companies and currently serving on 3 public company boards. Most recently, Lisa was the CEO of the fashion brand Alexander Wang. Prior to that, Lisa served as the CEO of Goop, a lifestyle brand founded by Gwyneth Paltrow, and was the president and CEO of Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia. In 2000, Lisa co-founded Oxygen Media with Geraldine Laybourne and served as its president and COO. In 2007, Oxygen was acquired by NBC Universal, and Lisa was made the president of strategic initiatives at NBC. Lisa began her career as a lawyer and has 13 years of experience at law firms, one of which she co-founded. Lisa serves on many company boards, and she's a graduate of the State University of New York, Binghamton, and holds a law degree from Rutgers Law School. Welcome. So good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
This is like such a dream of mine because when I met you, obviously we met at our friend's birthday, and we were just kind of shooting the shit and like 2 women meeting. I had no idea that you were this crazy badass. I just knew you were a good athlete. And then we were just talking about like, oh, running companies and women. And suddenly I started asking questions, and you were like this onion of like peeling back the layers of every single thing you said. I was like, wait, what? Wait, what? You're one person. It seems like you must have quadruplets somewhere because you're accomplishing too much. Okay. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire. Are you ready?
Sure. I'm ready.
Okay. Golfer. What's your dream golf vacation or destination?
I mean, every golfer dreams to play Augusta, but I'd say right now my dream golf destination is Cyprus.
Oh, nice.
Monterey. Yeah.
Are you going to make it happen?
I am going to make it happen. You got to pick one and go for it.
Love it. Of course. Who's your favorite fashion designer?
I have a lot. I think, if you look at all the big fashion houses, they're no longer really designed by, the same people who started them. So right now I have been talking to a young woman who's producing out of LA named Tallulah, and she makes Bardo Collective. And I think her clothes are extraordinary. And I think she's amazing. And she strives for simplicity and design and the right fabrics and the right colors. And it's something you just always want to put on and always feel good.
I'm writing it down. And do you have any nicknames?
Yes, I do. I have one, Slabby.
Slabby?
Slabby, Slabby, which was given to me by my twin sister. I don't know why. She started calling me Slapperpuss for a while, and then Slabby, and all of my nieces and nephews call me that.
That's hilarious. Okay, well, I guess maybe you already answered this, but I want to know, just like a vacation, are they all revolved around golf, or like what would your dream vacation be?
No, definitely not. Because I feel like it's fun to go play golf in different places, but I want to go do other things. And so right now I have 2 places that I'm really dying to go to. And I want to go to Vietnam and do a bike trip. And I want to go to Morocco because I've never been there.
Is there a CEO who, when you think of them, I guess that you would most admire or want to kind of spend time with?
I mean, someone who CEOs who I think have done spectacular jobs. I think Bob Iger did an amazing job at Disney. And I know Bob, and I think he is amazing, but he did an amazing job at Disney. And not only did an amazing job at just building the Disney brand. He built that into a media empire that didn't exist. So he'd be on the top of my list.
And are there 3 words that would be used to describe you as a leader?
I'm sure. I'm not sure I know all of them, but definitely decisive. I mean, everyone likes to think they're collaborative. I like to think that I'm collaborative, and a bit of a risk taker.
Nice. And what about 3 words that would describe you as a mom?
Oh, that's funny. I hope it's caring, empathetic, and loving.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if those were the words if we had your kids on here. I love the way you're describing your relationship with your kids. I was like, that's what I want as my kids get older. It's good.
They're fun.
So speaking of kids, tell me about you when you were a kid. What was your childhood like? Where were you raised?
We grew up in the Bronx. I really thought that the ideal day was going to Jones Beach. I mean, that was where we went. We never took one vacation to Lake George when I was a kid. My brother almost drowned. That's all I remember about that vacation. Fell in the pool, didn't know how to swim. That's what I remember about Lake George. But, what I find so interesting now is we were such happy kids. Like, you got up in the morning, you packed a picnic bag, and you went to Jones Beach, and nothing was better than that. And you got home early enough so you could play like stickball on the street. And that was a great day. And lots of free time. Kids weren't parented. There was no such thing as parenting. Your parents said you come home at, dinner's at 6. And that's what we did.
Yeah, it's so different now. It drives me crazy and so good with no technology. We just figured it out. I don't even know how we met up with our friends. It was like you just are where you say you're going to be.
You went where you said. They called you on the phone and, you talked. There was that long cord in the kitchen that you tried to privately have a conversation on. And when you were like 13, if you were really lucky, you and your siblings got to share a phone upstairs.
Totally.
I mean, that was like a big deal. But, my parents both worked in the garment center until they didn't, and then really ran out of money. So we grew up really with pretty much nothing. But I was always that kid who kind of wanted stuff, not physical stuff, but just like wanted to make sure that I could do what I wanted to do. So, rather than babysit, which then paid $1 an hour, it always surprises me what it pays now. I decided to get a job after I read an ad in the paper refereeing girls softball because it paid $5 a game. And I refereed softball for girls who were older than I was. And everyone in the little class that you had to go were adults. But I was 13 years old and I really wanted to make my own money.
Yeah.
So my parents really didn't have any. So I was always kind of that kid. Like I was always trying to figure out, I wasn't a schemer, but I was a worker. So like
you had the hustle.
Yeah. When I was in high school, like there were no such thing as side gigs there and you weren't selling things on the internet because it didn't exist. But I figured out getting a job working at a supermarket because it was union wages was the better job to get than going to work at Friendly's where you didn't get anything.
Where did you learn this stuff?
I'm not actually sure. But I think I just like figured it out. And so I got a job in the supermarket and that was pretty boring. So I thought this is before scanners that the most fun thing to do would be to memorize the price of every single thing in the store so that I didn't have to look and I could check out food faster. I thought that was the greatest thing in the whole world. And then, when I was 17, I lied about my age and got a job as waitress. And that I did all through the rest of high school and college. And I would come home every summer and I would get 2 jobs, 8 nights a week. And so every other week I would call in sick on that overlap night because I wanted more work. And then after 2 weeks of doing that, you get fired from one. But by then I'd already worked for 4 weeks. So it worked out really well.
You got a whole plan. When you see people that come out of the services industry, whether it's retail or working in a restaurant, are you more drawn to them because they feel more like relatable? They've got that hustle? Or do you not have like a prescriptive way of looking at people's backgrounds
I completely admire people who are going to do that because I know what they're doing. For the most part, they're doing it because they're, it was always really good money. And it was kind of that instant gratification. You did a good job, usually got a really good tip. Also played the game of memorizing and never writing down an order, which used to really annoy people. I swear to them, I promise you, I will not get your order wrong. I promise you. But, I was talking to my mom the other day. It's kind of interesting. And she, now that I sit on a lot of boards, which we'll come back to, but she was asking me, how do you get on a board? I said, it's a really interesting thing. Sometimes you get a call, and I get calls from time to time, but if you want to sit on another board, it's about constantly calling people and reminding them, oh, yeah, of course, I know you, of course, you'd be perfect, let me think. But it's like the last person they spoke to, right? They're going to call, oh, I just saw so-and-so.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded of them.
Keeping your network alive. Yeah.
But I said to my mom, it like reminds me of looking for the waitress jobs in the summer. Like I used to go get in the car and just drive from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant. Just, I need a job, and just keep applying for jobs until I got them. And I said, it's exactly what it reminds me of sometimes. I feel like I'm applying for a waitress job. I can just keep reminding people.
Funny. That's so funny. Well, I'm guessing your twin sister is probably the person who knows you best, since you are, just connected in that sister twin way. How would she have described you as like a fifth grader? What were you into, and what was your personality like?
I was a pretty driven student and pretty serious, I would say. Like my brother and sister were the comedians in the family, and I was like the straight person they played off of. Like I was that person. I had to do my homework. I had to go upstairs after dinner, so I get my homework done. I studied a lot. We had a mutual best friend, though, which was very interesting. Even though we were so completely different, we shared a best friend, and Donna Schulman. And we always did, but we were completely different. My sister and I have always been completely different, but we're best friends.
That doesn't.
Although I'm mad at her right now because she hasn't called me back.
That's a sister thing too. Were you into, I know you were a college athlete, but the way you described it was almost like not accidental, but it wasn't like you started basketball at second grade or something. Were you into sports in high school? And also, in my mind, I think of you as like a music friend. Like, were you into music in high school, or when did these things blossom
so
for
funny.
you?
So sports, no, because I was so busy working. Like I always had a job. Like even when I had the supermarket job, because sometimes I couldn't get enough hours, I'd go across the street. I worked at Burger King. That was like not a great job. So I was always working, and my parents owned a store, a needlepoint and fabric store, which ultimately went bankrupt. But I used to work in the store and teach women how to do needlepoint, which sounds so bizarre, but I worked every day after school, like from 3 to 9. Like my parents would pick me up, they'd go home, and I'd stay at the store and close until 9. Yeah.
Wow.
So
wow.
I listen to music all the time, but I'm not a big live music person, which is hysterical since I go to a ton of live music because of my husband's job, but
yeah.
Not that live music.
Well, the question I was going to ask you, but it sounds like young is the answer. Like, when did you realize that you had leadership skills? Because everything you're talking about is a form of leadership. Like, even if you're just leading yourself at the time, it's this.
Oh, no. I was young. I was 10. I made dinner for my family because my mom was working. And, I had a brother who was 2 years older, a twin sister. My mother would call me and I'd be like, wait, there are 2 other kids in this house, I'm pretty sure. But like, I made dinner for the family. Like I was always, my parents will tell you, I was always in charge. Always.
Yeah.
Just from get-go.
And you also strike me as somebody who's very confident, not just in the way you carry yourself, but in your ability to make decisions and trust your instincts. Where did you first have that feeling of like, I got this? Or do you remember?
So I do kind of. The first part was when my parents' store went bankrupt. My brother was 17 and I was 15. So he was about to go to college. And he picked me up one day from school and he said, "I have really bad news. We're not going to college because mom and dad don't have any money." And what do you mean we're not going to college? Of course we're going to college. Got to go to college. So I said, well, I'm going to figure this out. So I went to the guidance counselor's office. Again, remember, no internet, so you can't like Google, how do I get financial aid? So I go to the guidance counselor's office and said, I've heard there's this thing called financial aid. Like, how do I do that? So the woman gave me some forms and I applied for my brother. And there was one thing that I kept getting rejected for, but I think I applied so many times they finally gave it to us. But I got my brother full financial aid when I was 15 years old for him to go to college because I wanted to go to college. I was going. That was definitely happening. So
that's incredible.
Yeah,
was your brother grateful?
My brother and I are super close, but then my brother did a bigger favor for me. So I was not a great test taker. I was a great student, but a lousy test taker. My brother was at SUNY Binghamton, which is a great state school. And I wanted to go to SUNY Binghamton. There was no way I was going to get into SUNY Binghamton with my SATs. So my brother went to the admissions office and got me admitted to SUNY Binghamton. Literally.
How did he do that?
Like, he went and made friends with someone. He's like, you know, kind of told the whole story. I have to have my sister here and blah, blah, blah. And got it.
Was that the right school for you? I know you studied poli-sci and econ. Like, who was guiding you through that whole process? It sounds like your mom was kind of a hero, but not necessarily the mom who's going to tell you what to think about as far as college. Yeah.
My parents didn't go to college. Like, it wasn't, I mean, they thought it was nice and ultimately obviously understood it was the right thing for both my brother and I. My sister didn't go. She's had lots of learning issues, which no one knew what they were at the time, although she was definitely the smartest sibling. It just was, you know, my parents thought, okay, you're going to college. Like, I think the first time they saw the right school.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea because I didn't even know private schools existed. I went to PS 24 in junior high school in 41. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a private school. So would that have been nice? Maybe, but I couldn't afford it. And I was pretty happy. It's cold up there. Yes. Wish I'd gotten to school with better weather.
Yeah. And how did you know to study poly? Like, what was your interest level as far as poli-sci? Did you have I want to be this? Like, I know you wanted to be a lawyer, but was that the path?
It kind of was. And my brother, who was also went to law school and is a lawyer, he was poli-sci major. So it seemed like the right thing. I mean, I wasn't going to study French history or anything like that.
It's so funny the way we all make these decisions growing up.
So like, carelessly, like no idea.
Yeah, right. Versus today,
and now,
it's like,
oh my God, there's this major. And they're so lucky and they're so thoughtful about it. It's so nice.
Or just too much pressure and a whole bunch of bullshit. It depends on how you look at it or which day. Like, some days I'm like, this is incredible. Other days I'm like, just go be a kid. Like, we got to be kids, you know?
Yeah.
We got to be kids. We did. We both college athletes, which is, I think, super fun to talk about. But basketball, like, when was the first time you held a basketball in your hand?
No, I played schoolyard sports, like in the schoolyard. Like, we'd go to the park after school and my brother would let me play basketball with him. He also played football with me in the street. So he was a very good football player. I could really throw a football. So those two sports. So when I got there, like, I should have gone out for the tennis team. That would have been better. But it was like, basketball was the only thing I really knew how to do. There was an intramural football league, which I also played on as the quarterback. And I went out and the coach said to me, you know, it's 2 weeks of tryouts. If you can dribble with your left hand by the end of the second week, we might put you on the team. And when I went to look at who made the team, there were like 10 typed in names and one name written in pencil, which was mine.
In pencil.
I kind of want her, but maybe not.
Right. We'll see what happens. We might be able to.
Yeah, maybe we'll keep it.
And so what position did you play?
Point guard, obviously.
I'm 5'4". I was going to say, were you point guard? But I didn't want to.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
you never
by the way,
small forward.
I will never forget the first time I was like asked to take the ball up the court and I was playing. And the 2 point guards from Oswego were 5'10". I was like, time out, please.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do here. They're so big.
That's right. Don't run over me. That's crazy. Yeah, so you wanted to study law, you thought, and I guess your brother was going in that path. So again, this whole process.
Yeah.
Where did you apply? How did you know how to do it?
So I really thought I wanted to go to business school, but there were two things about business school. One, I never took calculus and I was afraid to take calculus. Because in high school, I stopped taking math in my junior year because I really didn't go to school my senior year because I was working full time. I only went 2 hours a day. And so there's no time to take another year of math. So I was a little afraid to take the math. And the other thing was I didn't know anyone in business. Like, who was going to give me a job? And I kind of knew in those days, if you went to law school, chances are if you graduated, you're going to get a job as a lawyer.
Yeah, it's security too.
Seemed like a really good job. And I was always that kid who was kind of like, this is wrong and, you know, very righteous. And so seemed like a good fit. So
the righteousness, I have I have 3, but one of my children, it sounds similar to you, but hers is in like an almost like advocacy way, like fighting on behalf of everyone else.
I got one of those.
Yeah. Right. And so what was yours about? Like, it's just specifically the law, or were you like, I want to get into family law or
I thought I actually thought very much that I would be a criminal lawyer.
Oh.
That's what I thought I was going to do. And so I went with that intention. And then the summer after my first year, I went out to San Francisco with a friend of mine. And, in the law thing, you really only get a good internship your second summer. So I went out there, got a job as a waitress, shocker, and did a internship in the San Francisco city jail. And my job was to see if I could help people get released on their own recognizance, meaning without bail. And the way you did that was all the people arrested the night before, you went in, you interviewed them, you had to find out if there was a bench warrant, they didn't qualify, meaning they failed to appear in court before. They had to have someone who they could vouch for them, and they have to have lived in the city for a year. Now, again, it's 1981, there are no cell phones, there's no internet, so you have to find that person they've told you about sometime during the day. So you go into court at 2:00 in the afternoon, they can show up and help get that person out of jail. But I'd say of the 20 people I'd see in the morning, we only got 2 out. Because either they had a bench warrant, we couldn't find anyone who would vouch for them. No one even knew they were in jail. They didn't have a phone number for the person.
Oh, that's so sad. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was real. And it was so heartbreaking.
So
and I said, I'm just not sure I could do that my
it's
whole
not sustainable.
career.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I did that as a check the box. That was interesting, but yeah, you'd be so depressed.
I thought it was, and then you're leaving them in jail until they go to trial. So, and pretrial incarceration is just horrible. So I didn't do that. I did become a litigator, but mostly for civil stuff. And then after a couple of years, I decided that litigation meant you just were going to fight all the time, and that I should do transactional work and try to make things happen. So I switched.
Interesting. I always wanted to, I love TV shows where there's, courtroom drama. And I would pay money to see you litigate. I bet you were good at it.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I liked being a lawyer. I thought it was really intellectually stimulating.
Yeah.
It was fun.
I do, as a recruiter, we don't have a practice that specializes in law, but I do get calls from attorneys who are unhappy, and they're like, now what do I do? And oftentimes they are looking to transition to a general counsel position. It sounds like for you, I remember you telling me it was a little bit more organic than waking up one morning and saying, I want to go.
I wasn't thinking about it. I think for lawyers that, if they're litigators, trying to do some corporate investigative work is very helpful, because you're then in a role that a lot of corporations need. The corporate lawyers have an easier time going to be general counsels. But if someone's at a good firm and they've done really good work, you always want someone who's had 4 or 5 years of experience in a firm in-house. They're invaluable.
Yeah. And so what was your story as far as your transition?
So I had gotten this crazy job at Debevoise & Plimpton, which was this big firm. And I couldn't believe, I think I was their experiment. They hired someone who went to Rutgers. I think I might have been the first person. I met all these people.
Right, because it's a fancy,
white, and they hire people out of white shoes.
White shoes, is it black shoes or white shoes?
And that's white shoes.
White gloves,
And they hire people who've gone to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, really good law schools. And Rutgers is a really good law school, but it's not those schools. I'm pretty sure I was an experiment. And I loved it, but I got a little, I don't know, I'm going to wait 10 years before anything's really great happens. So I knew this small boutique litigation firm, and I went there as an associate. And 3 months later, the firm broke up, and 6 lawyers were going one way, 6 were going the other way. They both asked me to join them. And I said, I'm going to go with whoever makes me a partner. So I want to be a partner, the second-year associate. So one of them agreed to make me a partner. So I went, and I stayed there. I practiced for 11 years. It's a great firm. My partners were super smart. They'd all been at big firms. They were all great lawyers. I loved practicing law. I thought it was fascinating, intellectually stimulating. I didn't have to travel very much when I had kids, and I didn't want to travel because of the kids. And so I loved it. But then I had this client who's in the media industry who persuaded me that I would make a great executive. And so
well,
I
it's
went
not
with her.
just like random. I mean, it's Oxygen Media, right? That was the transition. That's not just like, oh, you should do this corporate thing, like at this like small,
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
it's like go big or go home.
So we were going to start this, at first, we were going to start this internet business, and we were going to make television shows that kind of went with the internet we were doing. We were really focused on the internet. It was 1998, the internet.
Yeah.
Which
I was right there with you. We're not too far in age. Like we're the, yeah.
So we're really focused on that. And we tried to persuade some networks like MTV and that we should have some time on their network. And they looked at us like we had three eyes. So my partner was like, okay, we're going to go start a network. And I'm like, okay, like what I know, I didn't even know anything about what we're doing in the first place. So she said, well, I have these friends in Los Angeles and they always wanted to start a network. So we called them and they were big television producers. So they signed on. And then with them, they were like, well, we really need someone who can reach women. Like, who's the most important woman in the world in terms of influence? Easy answer. Oprah.
Clearly Oprah. Yeah. I was like an Oprah obsessed, like beyond. You have no epic. When I get asked in these podcasts, like, who do you most want to, it's Oprah for me. I mean, and I've heard mixed reviews about what she's actually like, but I am so blown away by what she's done.
She's amazing. So we fly out to Chicago. There's 2 meetings with her. And a week later, she's in New York. We're going to have a 3rd meeting with her. I've not said a word. I'm so intimidated. I have not said a word, which is very unusual for me. So I haven't said a word. And we're like at dinner. We're trying to get ready to like really wrap this up so we can finish the fundraising. We can, announce what we're doing. And still no one said a word. And we're like, they're serving the coffee and the dessert. So I say, so Oprah, we need to know, are you in? And deadpan, she just looks at me. She goes, now I know why you're here. Literally,
you're here. You're the closer.
You're the closer. You're supposed to get this done. And she was signed up, and it was amazing. It was this little idea that my friend partner had, Gerry Laybourne, to launch this multi-platform brand. Was on the cover of Forbes magazine before we even launched. It was a lot of hype, which was right around the time of DreamWorks. It was like the woman.
It was a client of mine in New York. Oxygen Media was in the what's it called building? I always get those brownies on the way.
Chelsea Market.
Yeah, in Chelsea Market.
We were the first big tenant there.
So I love Chelsea Market.
Yeah, it's amazing. I walked through there the other day. I couldn't believe it.
That's the best.
So there we were, and we launched on 02 because we were Oxygen.
Nice.
And
smart.
Yeah,
I get it.
And of course, it was a complete disaster. It's really hard to get it right the first time, but you work at it. And the internet was such a big part of what we're doing. We're trying to, have this thing where, we had a site and then we'd have a show that went with it. We thought women were actually interested in finance content. So we had a site and a show called Ka-Ching, and our sports show is called We Sweat. They had great names, but it was very hard to do. And you didn't know really what was driving the bus. Were you driving with internet content, which then, remember, 2000, no video. So what are you doing? And no high-speed internet access. In fact, when we started, the phone rang when you got onto the internet. Like
I remember.
Like,
how did you today it would be like we beta test with a small, subset. Like, how did you test these ideas? Was it just a group of, I'm guessing, men and women trying to whiteboard some of this?
Yeah. I mean, you didn't really test the idea of multi-platform. Like, we were convinced, and that was absolutely right, that people are going to access their content from multiple platforms. And that is the case today. If you're connected to a brand, you expect to get an app, you expect a site, you expect all that. So that was right. But what led was wrong. And also, women are complicated. They're hard to put into buckets. The woman who's sporty might also care about finance, and she might also be a mom, but she might be single and she might care more about going out. So trying to bucket women into those kind of pockets, I think is really hard. I think women are so multifaceted, and what they want to watch and listen to is very hard to define. And
and it depends if they're like looking for the brain candy, or if they're looking to learn, or if they're looking to get inspired. There's so many different ways that you ingest content.
And I think timing is everything, right? So we thought it would be really cool to have documentaries. Well, documentaries are the it thing now, but then nobody's watching documentary. And we did launch one show that's actually still on the air, which I find hysterical. It was called Snapped.
And that was the husband one?
Women yes. who kill their husband, they snap.
I remember you telling me that. That is awesome.
It's still on.
I need to watch it.
It's still on. In fact, unfortunately, Oxygen is now like a crime network because women watch a lot of crime. It's really interesting. It's one of the things they do watch and they like. It's a very big part of the demographic for crime shows is female. So anyway, we had that. It was enormous fun. We went through the internet bust and boom and, all the traumas of having partners who have different visions than you do and trying to get a collective creative thought is always really hard. But we were lucky that we were able to basically, and I think this is an interesting thing, is you start a business with an idea. It's like our idea of convergence between these platforms. And you get there and maybe that idea is not going to work. And in fact, in 2002, the internet kind of went away. And so there we were. I'm like, oh, well, thank God we have a TV network because that could be successful. That we know how to do. So we really focused on building a TV network and not building the internet business for profit, which kind of came back in 2005 when broadband became more fully distributed. You needed broadband. It wasn't going to work without broadband. But we had so many amazing ideas. Like we wanted to do WUP, Women's United Purchasing Power, which ended up being Groupon. And that was we can get 200 women to buy something and get it cheaper. But you couldn't, there was really no e-commerce in it. People weren't giving you their credit cards. I mean, then we had Best One, and this one to this day, my partner is still mad at me about this. We created, Jerry and I used to travel all the time together. And we're like, have magazines. Remember when you read, you rip a page out of a magazine, put it in your notebook, never to be looked at again.
Like a Pinterest.
Yeah. Well, we created downloadable software called RIPT, ripped, but nobody downloaded software. So it didn't, but that's what it was. You could take a web page and put it in your little file and have it.
Yeah.
But timing is everything.
Timing is everything.
Yeah. So then and that's also interesting. It's like you're starting a business, you really have to realize that timing is everything. And you have to realize execution is everything because it was a great vision. It was the wrong time. The television network ultimately was well executed. And the website ultimately was, but it needed broadband. And so we ended up selling the business in 2007 to NBC, which was great, which was exactly the right timing because after that, there was a recession and nothing was getting sold. And then things changed. There were tablets and there was more about mobile and now there's streaming. So if you think about the timing, it was kind of perfect. So that was good.
Yeah, it was perfect. And so hopefully that was a good outcome.
Yeah, it was a good exit. Yeah.
That's great. And so if you were to be launching that business today, I mean, it seems so much harder and easier in certain ways, but crazy right now, the criticism and attacks on the media industry as a whole, like just trying to get it right, trying to report the truth, it just seems like a really complicated industry right now.
And I think also trying, you get so much public criticism so easily and so publicly about things that people do. And, I know people have started business and then someone says something and then they're canceled because a group of people
right now.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So I think I think there's a pretty big moat to really starting anything. And I think it's more likely that you're going to be in a business that's going to be successful is going to be more Web 3.0 than it is anything else. I think basic cable and broadcast is essentially over, and it's over in 5 years. I don't think that there'll be linear television. I mean, even my mother has Hulu. So, I mean,
we have everything. And then when someone, of course, my list is ridiculous. I have the longest, like what to watch, because I always ask people, what are you watching? I love TV, sadly. But then they give you some network that you've never heard of it. Well, I better download that one.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think everything. It's kind of crazy.
I think it's very hard. There are a lot of mechanisms to sell product content, but it's also very hard to get noticed. And so I think there's so much out there.
Yeah. And what do you think of TikTok? Tough.
I mean, I love TikTok because I think it's a great marketing device. And I think right now it's the marketing device. I mean, 5 years ago, it was Facebook, then for a little while, Snap, then Instagram. and they'll come and go. TikTok's a good one though, it's great for marketing.
Yeah.
People love it.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, I always love to kind of figure out about cultures because you've got such incredible companies. And given the industry that I'm in, I'm always looking at recruiting and culture and how you draw talent. And you've got some big name people behind you, plus you. Was it easier, I guess, you transitioned then to work with and for Martha Stewart. And so you're going for these, you're going iconic women, your whole resume. I'm like, oh my God, these are all people.
You have to appreciate them. I think that's the first important thing. If you don't just appreciate the genius, that's the first step. The second step is to treat them like regular people. I mean, they are regular people. And I think the people who get around them and don't treat them like regular people and don't talk to them openly, there are, there aren't a lot of people who say no to Oprah when she asks for something. And I think that is always when you're that person who might say no or try to change their mind on something, I think that's pretty hard. But, if you're confident enough and so sure enough about what you think, I think that's the right thing. You also have to, I think I'm someone who knows when no is no. And when you know it's no, then you move on and you pick your battles.
Yeah.
You have to pick your battles because you're not going to win all of them. Part of them being them is them winning the battle all the time. And they have, and it's worked out.
Yeah, so it has. But I'm sure they appreciate that you're not just a yes person there to kind of fluff. And there's no purpose in having someone like you because you can execute, but you also do have an opinion and you're there for a reason.
I think I got to Martha. She's amazing.
How did that job come to you or you come to it?
So I ended up staying in NBC for a couple of years. And when I left, I was like, all right, I've worked my whole life. I have a teenage daughter and a 10-year-old, and I'm going to take some time off. And my first day out, I get a call from a recruiter. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Martha had already been away and come back. And I knew a bunch of people worked there. And I knew that a lot of people came and left. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And my husband was like, you should do this. This is a really interesting opportunity. You're not going to there aren't that many public company media CEO jobs in New York. And you're not leaving New York. So you go meet Martha's one of the more charming, interesting people you ever meet in your entire life. She's amazing. And so I had a couple of meetings with her. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm not going to take some time off now. And that's how it ended up. But I remember being there and what the offices were. So there was studios and photo studios and 5 kitchens because, one for savory, one for sweet, and walking through a photo shoot one day and people are rushing around. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, there's purple in the shoot. What do you mean? There's purple plates and Martha hates purple. I'm like, Martha hates purple? So I go back to my office right next to Martha's office and say, Martha, do you hate purple? And she's like, I don't hate purple. I'm like, well, everyone in this business company thinks you hate purple. So you're never going to see purple until you make that announcement. And by the way, this is a lesson when you're the founder or the CEO or a big executive, everything you say is taken with the loudest voice. So you just have to be so careful how you say things. And of course, now we have purple.
And now there's purple. That's so crazy.
But I went there with this idea of, her business had once been super successful. She was all over the place, media, merchandising, and trying to figure out how to put those two things together. Because I've always believed that they belong together, even though, there used to be church and state. There is no longer, but there used to be. And so I went there with that idea. And that was a very hard idea to sell to Martha in particular, because the magazine was sacrosanct and the product was sacrosanct. And the media part of the business was on a separate floor from the merchandising part of the business. So it was hard to do.
What was the job description though? When you took the job?
I was the CEO.
Right. But that's the title. What were the pain points that you were trying to kind of solve for? Was it a turnaround? Where was the culture as far as she just got out of prison? I mean,
she's been out a little while, but the pain points were the company spent more money than it made. And how do you figure out how to turn that equation around. And that wasn't that hard, honestly, because there was lots of low-hanging fruit there. There were businesses that were, the merchandising business, what was super successful. I mean, she had a great deal with Macy's, a great deal with Home Depot. I think it was PetSmart, one of the big pet companies, I can't remember now, but and the merchandise was amazing. I mean, she's the one who invented high design at Kmart. And, the sad part is she had that great relationship with Kmart and that fell apart. And then they kind of put these other ones to the Kmart one. I mean, I remember going to Kmart, like, where's the Martha Stewart product? Everybody wanted it. She was incredible. But, it was hard to get the business to focus. So, we'd go on Martha liked to go to the store. So we'd go on an advertising meeting like Procter and Gamble. And when we were in Cincinnati, we'd have to go to 5 Home Depots and 3 Macy's just to see it. And Martha would literally rearrange it if she didn't like the way it looked on the floor. I'm like, this is not getting us anywhere. There are too many Macy's and Home Depots for us to rearrange the floor. One time this is great. There was kind of this critical piece about her and Home Depot and her paint product. So we literally got in a cab and went to 23rd Street and mixed paint. Because how you make paint, it's white, yes, and then they pour the color in. Yeah. And that's what she did. And she helped people. She's standing there helping people pick up, and she loved doing it.
It's nice to be able to touch the business. Sometimes, like, the higher up you go, you're like, wait, I'm not doing the thing that got me here to begin with. So I can understand why she'd want to not just touch the product, but touch the customer.
Everything. Yeah. She wanted to touch everything about the business. And the company published a lot of recipes. We had 4 magazines when I got there, 2 when I left. And there was a rule, you had to make the recipe 5 times, which is a very good practice, and that Martha had to taste it. So one day I'm walking around the office with Martha, and we're, having like one of these walking, talking meetings, and come up to Martha, you got to taste this, we got to publish this recipe. And Martha goes, I really don't want to, at least you taste it. So I taste it, I'm like, wow, that's so good. She looks at the plate, she goes, needs more lemon.
She just knew.
She just looked at it. The woman had more taste than I did without even tasting it. It was incredible.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And so you obviously worked really well with her. And
I did. There were things that, she liked to control things. And if she wasn't in the meeting, people like that, if they're not involved, they get upset. If they are too involved, they're not really paying attention, they can be distracting. That's the challenge.
Yeah. They come in as the heavy and you're like, we've been working on this for 4 months. Like, yeah, I understand that.
We did, and she did that. We did an event. I mean, when I got there, we were having some issues with getting advertising. I'm like, maybe this brand just isn't relevant anymore. And I actually sat at a dinner table with my kids. Daughters were like, Mom, you're nuts. This is the coolest job you've ever had. I'm like, really? This is the coolest job I've ever had? Okay, going with that. So I was like, came up with this idea that we were going to celebrate Martha as the founder of lifestyle genre, which she was.
100%.
So 100%. So we did a contest in the magazine to pick the 10, great lifestyle entrepreneurs, like really niche, like we had a cheesemaker and we ran it in the magazine, we put them on the show, and we were going to have this big event in Vanderbilt Station in New York City called American Made. And, it really was Martha anointing these lifestyle experts.
Those people write their own ticket after that. That's pretty sweet.
So we have the mayor comes, the head of the SBA comes. It's amazing. The advertisers, we got sponsorship for the event. This is amazing. And like every day Martha would walk in, she'd say to me, she goes, I'm just a little confused about this. If this is all about me, why are we celebrating other people? It's just like, because that's what you do.
Then that's also like the smartest thing about marketing.
Yeah.
Like focus on others. Yeah.
Yeah. She was very happy after that.
I'm sure. And how did the whole Snoop Dogg thing come to be?
I don't know. That was post me, but she always loved him. He was on her show all the time. That's the thing about her. And this is, I think, what makes people like her great. She's so curious. You cannot be her and be that expansive in your knowledge base and what you're good at without being curious. So she's just curious about everything.
Yeah. And I'm super curious. I mean, I'm curious. I am actually very curious about if you had to have kind of a few takeaways, and we're going to get to Gwyneth, another influencer, of course, but what were some of your key takeaways as far as, oh, I'm going to use that going forward from Oprah or from Martha stylistically? Was it the curiosity? Is it the control? Like, what have you taken from them? And also, what do you think they would have taken from you?
I think, the things, there's probably a fair bit that with Oprah, it was really going deep all the time, really understanding her audience, really listening hard. She's a fantastic listener. I think more with Martha is what I kind of thought what I wouldn't do. It's more, sometimes you have to just step back when things aren't working and do a reverse. We did that at Oxygen when the internet really bubble burst. We had 250 people on the internet side of our business who we had to fire. And it's like kind of knowing when you have to stop. And I think that's probably the most important thing. And really where I wanted to get her to was either putting those two businesses together, like the magazine became almost a catalog and we gave up the advertising, or you got rid of most of that part of the business because you couldn't really have them both. So, Martha is otherworldly in terms of taste and prescient. She's very prescient. She sees things that other people, doing what she did with Kmart was incredible.
I completely agree. And so you were there till when? What year did you leave there?
2011 to 2014.
2011 to 2013.
And then I was going to take time off again. And there I was. And then one of my daughters had a birthday and I made t-shirts and they told me to go back to work.
Yeah. You're like, I'm going to be the overachieving mom now.
Yeah. Now I'm going to actually pay attention. No, I was paying attention, but, Gwyneth was involved in a business with Tracy Anderson and they wanted someone to come and run this business. So I got a call about the business and I'm like, I'm not interested. And my kids were all working out. My girls at this point were working out with Tracy Anderson. I was like, no, I'm not interested. My kids were like, Mom, Tracy Anderson's like so cool. And then the recruiter said, and her partner's Gwyneth Paltrow, and she'd like to meet you. Like, what? I'd like to meet Gwyneth Paltrow too. Who wouldn't? So I went to the meeting with her and I said, look, I'm really not interested in this job at all, but I'm happy to give you some advice and help you figure out what you need to know and how to move it forward. And I probably know someone who could help you out. And my stepdaughter ended up taking the job and I ended up on her board, helping her for a bit.
Taking the CEO job?
No, my stepdaughter was the COO.
Wow,
and I was amazing. An advisor helping them do that. I did. So in the middle of that, Gwyneth was moving back to the United States. She had a friend of hers, Juliette de Bobigny, had said, Gwyneth, you should turn this into a business. I said to her, I know exactly what this business should be. And, I've always wanted to put content and commerce together. I think it's the only way to do it at this point. And she said, will you come help me do it? I said, sure. So we did that.
So how many people were there when you started and what was the business and business model and how did it change over time?
2 people were there other than she. And there wasn't really a business model. Gwyneth would make recommendations from time to time and they would get affiliate revenue for that. And I said, no, we're going to sell advertising and we can also sell other people's products. We don't have to do affiliate and we don't even have to take inventory because people are at that point, so happy to have Goop basically recommend their product by selling it. They would give it to us with concessions. So yeah, that worked out really well. But then we changed. After time that had changed. But the idea of the content and commerce really did work. And I get calls about that all the time from people how do you do that?
Well, and it still does. I follow Goop and it actually kind of bugs me. I think obviously she can be polarizing. And I listened to her podcast on that Dax Shepard did with her, where he kind of addressed that. And I feel like it's unfair, the criticism that she gets, because she's not trying to target every customer and every audience. It's supposed to be kind of fun and it's supposed to be
very targeted,
exciting, but it's not for everyone. And so people who are like, oh, well, of course we want the Hermes, stationery or whatever it is. Some sort of crazy thing,
so
but it's
funny.
like, that's okay.
You know what I always find so funny about it? If you look at we always got criticized for our gift guides, and we ultimately ended up making fun of it. But it was like, look at Neiman Marcus's gift guide. They have a plane in there, for God's sakes. Like
a plane.
Not a plane. But it isn't for everyone. I so admire Gwyneth in her ability to be so highly opinionated and knowing she's going to get criticized for that.
Yeah, of course. You can't be a person who's obsessed with what people think of you and also
she's not.
Be her.
She's really no, she's really not. I mean, she's got.
Yeah, I'm guessing that she's probably also pretty business savvy and creative combo meal because the business is like a legit business.
I think she is now, not when we started. I think when we started, she needed me as a CEO because I knew how to raise money. I knew how to do the business plan.
Yeah.
I knew how to set up business. She didn't know that, but she is so smart and such a quick learner. I mean, I remember one of my favorites is was one of our pitches. I think it was an A round pitch. And it was like the last pitch, and I thought we were going to get the money. So I'm like, going to bring Gwyneth. It's always like, if you bring Gwyneth, you probably get the money. But you don't want to take up all her time doing it. So I was meeting her in the Valley, and I said, I need to meet with you before. Let's prep. I got to prep you for this meeting. I need you to say 5 things. And she's like, oh, just tell me later. And I'm like, no. Written down on a piece of paper. And I say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She said, okay, I got it. And I said, okay, let me hear it. And she was pretty good at it. And she was completely passionate about the business, totally believed in it. And wanted it to be a serious business. I think though, what I would say is I think it's really hard to make that transformation because in business, I always say business is a series of problems that need to be solved. That's what it is. And so if you don't look at it that way and you're thinking of it as something else, then you're going to be disappointed all the time.
That's so interesting. What I find ironic, Lisa, is that you started talking about how earlier in our conversation, you were like, well, I'm going to go to law school. I'm not really maybe not go to get an MBA because I just never wanted to do calculus. It seems like all of your jobs involve balance sheets and P&Ls and fundraising and all the numbers.
So here's the craziest thing. If you ask me what the affiliate marketing budget was for Oxygen in 2003, I could tell you that number. And I don't know why. I have no idea. If you ask my husband if I know anything about any of our bills, nothing. I don't look at them. He looks at them. If you did tell me the number, I would remember it 100%. So people would come into budget meetings at Oxygen. They say, oh, the year presenting next year's budget. Here's how we finished last year. Here's what we need this year. And I'd be like, didn't you tell me last year that the budget was going to be 229,000, not 242? Why did you spend 242? It was weird. Really weird. But Gwyneth's like that too. I mean, she has the amazing memory for stuff like that. And she was super engaged and really wanted to work it. I think what's hard for people like Gwyneth, Martha, not so much Oprah, because she was not in that role. I think it's hard to be a manager because people
manage people. Yeah.
That's the hard transition. It's not the business part about it. It's not the putting the pieces together, what goes with what do we need to do, what's next. I think the management is harder.
And what part of that do you think was hard? Just I can't deal because they expect perfection or they expect efficiencies that other people can't.
I think they expect perfection.
That's what I'm saying. They want people to be in a way that they are. Yeah,
right. Exactly. They expect people to be perfect and people are not perfect.
Or they don't care to be perfect.
And I think people disappoint them in that regard. I think it's very hard because people are not that, and they're not supposed to be that. I used to say to them both, in baseball, if you bat 350, you're in the Hall of Fame. That means you missed 3/4 of the time. And or 2/3 of the time. It's not so different in business. In my opinion, business, if you get 70% of stuff right, wow, that's amazing because you can fix the other 30%.
Yeah, that probably makes you a great people manager. Do you think that you are a good people manager?
I think I'm a very good people manager. I think people but you have to be prepared to hear it. I hate when people don't just say it straight out. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
And what they need to hear. I'm also pretty nice, but I am going to say it. And I think once people know that, they know. It's like,
and they're probably, you probably, I'm guessing I'm this way. Like I expect complete accountability, and I'm the same way. I'm like, oh God, I totally dropped the ball on that. I'm so sorry. But when people try to like make it sound pretty, but it's actually not, it drives me crazy. I'm like, just own it. We all make mistakes.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
I mean,
I would imagine you're good.
Yeah.
So what do you think is a, I guess, consistent theme? What was your favorite culture as far, I mean, you helped build these cultures, but it comes from the top. So which one was it like, I could replicate this and be super proud?
Oxygen was an amazing culture. And I attribute that so much to my partner, Jerry, who had built a lot of companies. And she built Nickelodeon. She really cared so much about people. In fact, I think it was really funny. We started Oxygen in 2000. We launched in 2000, and we had a reunion in 2020.
And so fun.
And everyone showed up. And I thought that was so interesting. That. I can't imagine that at any other company I've ever worked at. Any other company.
Well, that everybody was able to even remember and track people down. And
there's like a Facebook group. I mean, it's incredible. So that was an amazing culture. We loved it. And it was, people plugged along with us when we had to make all those big changes and we were growing, and everybody was so proud to be there. That was really fun.
Yeah, that's great. And tell me about Alexander Wang, I told you this when I was talking to you. I was like, I love Alexander Wang. His clothes were great for me.
Such a gifted designer. I think that's a hard one because his company is owned by his family. So you have,
I didn't realize that.
Kind of a very difficult mix where you have like the creative director, designer, CEO, and a family who's kind of the money, not a real board. But this is what I always say about that job. So happy I did it, because learning about apparel has been super helpful for me in other aspects of things I've done on boards and stuff, and supply chain and all that, and all the visits I made to Asia. Really helpful. I love clothes, and I don't like the fashion industry. It wasn't like I thought, okay, I love clothes, so I'm going to love the fashion industry. I didn't. Yeah. It's a very hard business because it's so much driven by high fashion. And, from the designer's point of view, it's all about the runway, and you never sell runway. Most of the clothes that walk down a runway never get made.
Right. Interesting. I remember when we were talking about it, you were talking about the overlaps of like the things that you've seen weave through the industries that have helped you. Like, I can crush this because I see it through a different lens.
Yeah. I figured out how making a television show is the same as making a dress. It's the same exact process. All products have like ideation periods. All products have manufacturing periods. All products have distribution and sales periods, and figuring out how all those things relate. And one of the things I did when I got to Alexander Wang was change that, because, fashion, a lot of high fashion brands have 4 seasons. So they have 1 season in the showroom, 1 season in the store, 1 season being manufactured. It was crazy. Designers can't keep up. Customers don't know the difference. No one understands the difference between fall and pre-fall, resort and spring. I mean, those are names that people understand. So when we changed it, I'm like, we're just going to have summer and winter. And so then they said to me, well, and then I said, we're going to ship it 12 times a year so that there's newness all the time. And they're like, well, what are we going to call what we ship in October? I said, October. They're like, what are we going to call it October? Then everybody's going to know what it is. And it's supposed to go, just keep it simple. Simple is the easiest way to go.
And how was that received?
It's interesting because it was, not only did I get Alex to do it, but I partnered with the head of the fashion group, I forget what it's called. And I got the Row in and Rodarte in, and 2 other brands who are similar sized brands to agree to do their seasons that way so that their fashion shows. And part of it is, when's the fashion show going to be? So we moved the fashion show to June instead of September, when everybody else's were. So they all did the same thing too.
Were you able to get a big audience to come in June? Because people are so used to Fashion Week.
Yes, indeed. People actually are in New York in June. Like, why wouldn't they come?
Yeah. I
it
like
wasn't
New
that
York
hard.
in June. What about you? That's like,
Yeah,
that's
no, it
always
was
coming.
people came. I mean, you do it around certain things. The tricky thing are the buyers and when they're going to spend their money. But if they all like made the change and like train the buyers, it'd be fine. And now wholesale wholesale is so changed. There's no more Barneys, barely any wholesale. So
Yeah, it's sad.
yeah,
So
it's
what was
tough business.
he like to work for? I mean, I've read some kind of controversial stuff. I'm guessing it was not while you were there based on the
It,
dates.
it wasn't, and I never saw any of that. There are people who worked for him, like he had one woman who worked for him for like 7 years, who was his right hand, who's really good. A lot of these people always have someone who can interpret them, which I think is important. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what would Alex want? And if they're not in the room, they know. He's I when I was trying to change, this will explain. I was trying to change the seasonality. I was like, well, let's just have it sit in the showroom after. He goes, no, I'll keep changing it. And that's absolutely true. It's hard to stop and hard to know when it's enough. And, most of the time designers will design like 300 pieces and sample 200 and then make 150. Those percentages need to be right in order for a business to be profitable. And it's very hard to control a designer who's so passionate about what they do, but they want to do more.
Yeah, I can see that. I can totally see that. I'm curious because it seems to me like you're extra efficient. Um, do you have hacks that you can pass on to me or anyone listening for like how to set yourself up, I guess, for a good week, a good day, a good trip?
Sunday's key. So Sundays are key. Sunday nights always have to be a planning night. You have to sit down with your calendar. You have to look at it. You got to put your workout in your calendar or you're not going to do it. And a lot of people don't like to do that because their calendars are public. I'm like, I don't understand that. Put your workout in your calendar in time that makes sense for you and make sure it fits in. I had some friend who used to go to Soul Cycle and it was too close to her office. So she just used body wipes to clean herself off and went to work. I mean, you got to get it in any way you can. And, my packing tip, because I'm a really good packer, is you need to make a list of the days you're going to be gone. And you literally need to write down everything you're going to wear. Monday day, Monday night, Tuesday day, Tuesday night. And as few colors as you can bring as possible so that your shoes always match because you're only going to bring one pair of shoes.
And what about when you get there? And because I'm a person who doesn't plan my outfits, I just go with my mood and energy at that time. I have like 30 different fragrances.
But you can't do that when you
can't do that.
Not when you're traveling.
So how do you just have to be a person who's just, I'm going to commit to this outfit.
I'm committing. I check the weather. I'm committing. I'm 100% committing to this outfit. No, I have a no optionality rule. Well, and by the way, if you're going to bring your sneakers to work out, tie them in the outside of your bag because you can't put your smelly sneakers in your bag. And all workout clothes can be worn twice.
So Lisa, you mentioned your mom asking you about board work and how you decide and what the process is like. What was your first experience like being on a board and what role does a kind of good board member play?
Sure. I mean, I started on a public company board in 2005, which was an early internet company called The Knot that went public.
I remember The Knot.
It was great. And that was a much less formal board. We didn't have committee meetings. It was just basically one meeting. And it was relatively small. So it was more like a private company board than a public company board. My first public company board was Hasbro. And at that time, I was a public company CEO at Martha Stewart, and I had public company board experience. The weird thing about public company boards is a lot of times they're looking for board members that have public company board experience. So how do you get that? They'll oftentimes pick someone who's a sitting CEO or CFO of a large company who maybe participates in the public company board meeting. But it's a complicated process because if you're not on one, then how do you get on one? And so I always say it's good to start in a company that's private and maybe will go public, which is a good way to do it, to get on. But sitting on a public company board is very different than running a company because you're not running the company. And you have really two main jobs. One is to make sure that you have a strong and a performing CEO, and that you have a good succession plan in case the CEO leaves. And the other is to approve the company strategy. It's really not to hire people. It's really not to develop the strategy, develop marketing plans. You can look at those, you can have opinions about them, but that's not really what you're there to do. And you're also there to approve largely capital allocations of funds. So if the company wants to make a big acquisition or divest something, that's something as a board member, you're going to have a loud voice in. But at the end of the day, you're sitting on the board not to serve management, but to serve the shareholders. That's who you're there for. And so it's an interesting line because you're working with management, but you're there to protect the shareholders, and that's the function.
Yeah, I've never really heard it said that way. I like that.
I like it because you get to, especially on the committee level, you get to help the company's strategy on, let's say it's a compensation committee. And, those are really important issues that come up because you're thinking about, how do I retain the best workforce with the right compensation plan? How do I reward the workforce and make sure that those rewards are consistent with the value the shareholders are getting? And these are tricky times because, the equity markets are really down and people could still be really performing. You give them a set of goals, they hit their revenue, they hit their operating margin targets, and yet the shareholders the share stock has gone down. That's a very complicated equation for people. It makes it hard to retain the best ones.
Yeah. I again keep hearing these analyses through numbers, and you've become an expert. I love it. So beyond the numbers part, what I think would these boards say about you as far as what you're bringing to the table, your ninja warrior skills?
Well, I would say that my ninja warrior skills, I know a lot about board processes and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And, when we look at strategy, I know a lot about consumers and marketing and what makes sense. And I think, especially if you've been on the board for a couple of years and you've seen things happen, we've gone in that direction. It didn't work. Why are we thinking about going back in that direction? Because we already did that. I've heard that before. It didn't work. Let's not go do that. We have a new company that maybe has been focused on growth rather than profitability. Your job as a board member is really to say, this market doesn't care as much about growth anymore. We really care about profitability. So that marketing spend that you were going to do, maybe not.
Yeah. Interesting. And so I have a last couple of questions because I know that you've spent a great amount of time, which I super appreciate. I'm just curious about legacy for you. Legacy as a leader, legacy as a mom, legacy as a member of your communities that you live in. How would you want people to describe you as far as the mark you're leaving?
In terms of being a leader, I would want them to describe me as someone who's been, has helped them move forward in their career. I get calls all the time from people I've worked with previously at all the companies I've worked with for advice and direction on how to move forward. And I hope when they're working with me, my goal is for them to grow up and be CEOs. So I hope that's happened to a bunch of the people that I've worked with, and the businesses I've worked with have made as good a mark as they can make. That's important to me. As a mom, I want my kids to be successful and happy and live free and independent lives. And I think they're doing that, and super happy about that. And, my passion, which we talked about a little bit, has always been criminal justice. And the board I sit on is called the Bail Project. And we work to help people get out of jail before their trials, and also to work on bail reforms, which I think are really important because there's some crazy statistic that for every day you stay in jail, even it's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, the likelihood you commit a crime when you get out grows exponentially, in part because you probably lost your job when you were in jail. And if I get you out of jail, 50% of people who get bailed out of jail never go to trial. They never, because the prosecutor can't say, hey, why don't you take this plea and then you can go home, which is what most people do. when they're accused of misdemeanor and they go home. But if they're not in jail, they don't take the plea.
Oh, interesting.
And it's just fascinating. We have 500,000 people rotating through the system on a daily basis and 10 million people in this country incarcerated, which is more than any other democratic country in the world.
Yeah, it's so messed up. It's so overwhelming. Thank you for doing something about it. Like, it does feel very overwhelming and sad and frustrating. Okay, my final question is, what fuels you? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Oh, just life. I love living. I hate missing a minute. And some days when I'm tired and I want to sleep, and I'm like, just so many great things.
I can sleep when I'm dead.
I like to sleep. I try to go to sleep early because I don't really believe in that edge. I think you need to sleep or you will be dead. I think sleep is really super important to your health. And so, I want to sleep, but I get up just because I'm so excited.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.